Hey everybody, this is JacqBean coming back with a review of The Walking Dead's Dead City. That's going to be the Maggie and Negan story. I've definitely been looking forward to seeing it, and it didn't miss. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. So let's get to the reaction. So the story begins with Maggie. She's looking over at New York City. So I'm just going to make up that she's in New Jersey, because New Jersey, I think, is the only place that kind of has that view from across the Hudson that looks at New York City. And she's just looking at it through a long lens. And all of a sudden she kind of hears some rustling behind her, growling on her side, on the Jersey side, I guess, if that's a better way to put it, where she turns around and realizes there are walkers behind her. So she goes and she kind of hides under a bridge or a boardwalk or something like that. Well, she turns herself to look at the walkers that were behind her. One comes and grabs her leg. And she's struggling, but she frees herself, and she starts to hit them with that lens. It was a pretty big lens, and she beat him till he wasn't nothing but juice. His whole head was kind of, she just kept sitting on him and hitting him and hitting him and hitting him. Now, of course, because this is a show with Maggie and Negan, it made me think of what Negan did to Glenn and to Abraham. That she was just, because she wouldn't stop, she just kept hitting and hitting. He was liquid, his head was anyway, by the time she finished with it. We know that the premise of Dead City is that somebody has taken Hershel. They've taken her son, and Maggie definitely looks like a person on a mission to be able to get him back. But this was just kind of a scene where she's scouting, figuring out a way how to get across that water and get into New York City, or what we are going to be lovingly called the Dead City. It starts out with Maggie going to this bar. She's looking for someone, which we will learn is Negan. She's looking for him and trying to get some information from the bartender, who is, trying to chat her up, and she kind of tells him that she has a cabin about an hour away, that it has a bunch of groaners, and she is just looking for somebody that could, that would be able to help her. And of course he tells us, like, oh, we got the best guy here, he'll be able to help you. I think he'd be able to help you. So now we have this word groaners. So we're going from walkers to groaners to carry-on in Fear the Walking Dead. I don't know if I can get used to all of that. For me, they're always going to just be walkers. So the bartender is willing to loan them out. But Maggie just really wants to know where he is. So she's like, does he live here? Like on the premises? Because it was like a bar, but it's a motel too. And so the boss lady on the side, she was just kind of like, don't you have other work to do? Don't we have a generator that needs to be filled? Just kind of taking his attention away from giving Maggie anything, or giving her any information. So Maggie acts like she has to go to the ladies' room, and she just walks by the ladies' room and goes outside and starts to look inside the motel room. She's trying to see if she can find where Negan is staying, in what room, and she gets caught. And they bring her back back into the bar, kind of dump her on the table. And that lady was she was suspicious of her. She looked suspicious, and that's why she was trying to stop that guy from talking to her. But she thinks that she's somebody, like one of her competitors sent her in to snoop. And so she's like, I'm gonna mess your face up. And it was her. She had pulled out this knife. She was going towards Maggie's face. There were like 3 or 4 people inside there, kind of surrounding her. And Maggie, of course, came up with having a little knife up inside her shoe, and she got that woman off of her and literally beat the hell out of everybody else. they were all down, and she looks up and she sees Negan. And so she's trying to get up to run towards him, and there was this young lady, and she tripped her. And then the young lady and Negan got the hell out of there. They were running fast. So then Maggie left out of there. She ran to her truck, and she got inside the truck, and then somebody that was loose tried to get her, and she let him have it. She also knocked out of her truck a telephone book, it looks like. So you know how you have those telephone books that we had in the day, because I don't even think we have them anymore, but they would not only have the names and numbers, but they'd have the maps for the area of the telephone book. So it was one of those. The map that she was holding at the beginning of the episode that she was looking at, that really was giving her a view of how to get through Manhattan, was one of those pages, and I believe that it was pulled out of that book. So she's driving in a truck, and she's caught up with Negan and the girl, because they're on foot. They're not going to really be able to get too far. They're not going to be able to get farther than her anyway. So she's just kind of running circles around them, just kind of being able to stop them in one spot. And she did. So Maggie gets out of the car, and Negan is going to try to come to her like he's going to stab her in the head like she's a walker. But she got him. Knife right at his neck. She was like, listen, I thought you was better on your feet than that. But beside all of the great pleasantries, and it was sarcasm, was rich and lovely. For the most part, she wanted to get him. It looks like the marshals are looking for him. They have wanted signs of them looking for him, which he didn't know. But she wanted to get to him first, because the person that took her son ran the same playbook as Negan. He had the whistle, he asked for stuff, and then he want to come next time and get more stuff, and next time to get more stuff. And that's definitely how Negan and the Saviors ran their operation. We find out that Negan does know this guy, and he was the Croat, I think is what he called them. And Negan said that there was, that from Negan's perspective, he was even worse than Negan was, which is really saying something. But we'll see. So with Negan having this little girl, and she was a girl, she was like a teenage girl, and she was kind of helping him out because he fell and busted his behind when Maggie was chasing after him with that car. He hurt his leg, and he asked her to come and kind of help him to wrap it up and everything. And you could tell that Maggie was just kind of like disgusted, like, is he hanging out with this little girl? And asked him about Annie and the kid, which you could see his face. You could see that there's a story there, but he hadn't told it at this time. And that's really what I want to know. What happened to Annie and the baby? Because he was so looking forward to that. That had changed him, I believe, a little bit. Don't know if maybe like Morgan, this brought him back to where he was when he was Negan. So Maggie feels like, you owe me to help me, because you know who this guy is, you know what kind of a guy he is, and that's my expectation, because if I could find you, then the marshals are looking for you too. They'll be able to find you as well. So Negan kind of bartered with Maggie. He wanted her to take in that young girl that he had, because in the Hilltop they have schools and, all kinds of things, and security and safety, and he wanted her to be able to have that. And Maggie was okay with helping her. She said, we'll see about you, though. And after we get my son back, we'll see what we do with you. So as they were sitting and waiting for a person from Maggie's community to come and get the young girl, we got to understand how he met her. He was hanging out at a place. The marshals started to get close to him. He wanted to leave. She asked if she could come with him. But it looks like she would definitely be a person that wanted to get out of that community, because she had seen her dad as a walker and was pretty traumatized by that. But we also learned that the Hilltop isn't the Hilltop as we knew it, the location of it. It's all the same people, but they had to move. They had to relocate to a different area as we see them waiting for the person from Maggie's community to come down, they change the scene and goes back to that bar. And you have a truck that comes up, and it has the marshals. So you really get to meet the marshals. And they look like some sadistic folks, too. They go inside the bar to tell the people that they're looking for Negan. They're looking for him. They talk about him and some of the stuff that he's done. They even bring up the fact that they've heard that he lined a group of people up and beat one man over the head. And I'm sure that's not the only time they've ever done it, but that just kind of takes you back to Glenn and Abraham. The bar folks are like, no, we don't know who that is. And they're not having it. Even if they didn't know who it is, they wasn't having it. But they carried the woman that was the owner, and they put her face up against the gate where the walkers are starting to come towards the gate. They come in to get her, and she goes, oh, I know where he is. I'll tell you. And she got to tell them the information that she had, but it was mostly that there was a woman that came in the blue truck, and she took him. So, but even though she gave him that information, he was judge and jury and decided that she was guilty of aiding and abetting, and he stuck her through the slit of the gate, and so the walker started to eat her. So he sentenced her to death, and she told him the information she had. So these are going to be some, law nuts that make sure that you follow the law to your death, to the death of you if you can't do it. He didn't do it because he wanted to. He did it because it had to be done. So the marshals leave the bar, and they know that it's Maggie, although they don't know it's Maggie. It's like, so it's her, huh? She's been looking for him, the lady that's been looking for him, but leaving broken bodies all over the place. But as he walked back to their truck, or they noticed the phone book that Maggie had dropped on the ground. He picked it up, and it wasn't a phone book, it was a map book. And when he picked it up, he could tell that there were a bunch of pages ripped out. And he just kind of, I guess, looked at what kind of numbers could be available. But he realized when he looked under it and looked at Manhattan that was the map that had been taken out, that had been ripped out of the book. So he knew that they were going to be going to Manhattan. Or I guess, I don't know how he would know, because it was on the ground. Anybody could have dropped it on the ground, but I guess to make some continuity to the story, he had to know that it was Maggie and that she and Negan were going to Manhattan. Oh, Maggie is definitely in a place. When she beat that walker's head into it was just liquid, you start to understand why she's having nightmares about what Negan did to Glenn, nightmares that show him hitting him over and over again with the bat or with Lucille, and I am getting traumatized myself just looking at it. So I just, even to an extent, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to move forward a little bit because I can't even see this anymore. And that is what she gave to that walker in the beginning. She gave him that hit on the head that Negan had done to not only Glenn, but Abraham too. It was just really tragic to see it again. But she wakes up, and she and Negan start to talk a little bit. Negan knows that Maggie needs him, but Maggie's letting him know that he needs her too, because the marshals could come and get him. He's like, if you don't have me, then you won't be able to get your son back. And she's like, don't make me have to kill you, because I will. The marshals come up around that area where you cross into New York City, and we find out that New York City was the epicenter. And New York City, it's an island, so The military burnt down the bridges and the tunnels, buried the tunnels and the bridges so people couldn't get out. And so that's why the city is the dead city, although everybody on it isn't dead. But he also, the guy, I think his name is Armstrong, he pulls out this piece of paper and it has an address on it, a New York address. So I'm thinking something, I think it says Gail Armstrong, but so maybe he has a wife or a family or somebody that is there, and he wasn't there when New York City became cut off to the rest of the world. So we'll see, because there's something about New York City that is making him go in there too, not just Negan. Negan seems like maybe a good excuse to go. And as he's sitting there looking, he hears a motorboat start to go across the water, and he's like, oh my God, that's them. But when he goes and he puts up his binoculars just to see, he can see that it's Maggie, but they have one of his deputies, and they're on their way to Manhattan. As they've crossed the Hudson, I believe, they've noticed that there aren't any walkers around, chompers. It's like, where are they? Because we knew from earlier in the episode that when Maggie was looking across, it was nothing but them walking across the piers and that kind of thing. But then, Negan just kind of stops Maggie and asks her if she would take care of Jenny. That's the young girl that he had with him, so he really cares about her. And as much as you just want to kind of look at him and go, he is just a total mess. What is he doing with that young girl? He really is caring for her. He wants to make sure that she's okay. And, so I think that Negan doesn't either believe he's going to come back, or he may not want to come back, but he's just kind of putting some things in writing for her so that she'd be okay. So then they start going, they're walking through the city, and walkers start to fall all out of the sky, like they falling off buildings. They had to go and hide and try to hide in order to get away from these walkers. They went under scaffolding. They were falling off. We don't know where they were coming from. Although there was a lady that was on the roof with white hair. I can't imagine if she was throwing them down, but she knew what was happening. It was absolutely incredible. They're continuing to hide. All of a sudden it stops, the falling of the walkers out of the sky. So they continue to walk. They kind of bypassed a couple of traps, and they walk down this street that they find that they're in a dead end. It's just kind of garbage and stuff right towards the end. They can't go any farther, but they hear music. It's music playing, and then this truck comes running by, and it's full. Behind it is full of walkers, lots of walkers, and it's like the Pied Piper come riding through, and all of the walkers come following behind us. But they're in the place now that they're stuck. They can't move from where they are. There's nowhere to go but behind the garbage. So it looked like it was garbage that was there. And then they ran into, when they stood behind the truck, the absolute cockroach heaven. My skin is crawling even talking about it. But you definitely have cockroaches, big cockroaches in New York City, where you have lots of garbage and those kind of things. So even they were like, hitting it off the head. Negan was like, nope. And I got it, because I was just like, I would have just died right there in that spot. So they are pretty much surrounded. And all of a sudden you get machine guns. They start shooting behind it. And the deputy, he's like saying, we're here. We're in here. And so we know then that the marshals is coming, even though I can't imagine that they were in the truck. But I don't know that wasn't the case. But they started shooting. So Maggie, Negan, and that deputy, they run into a cleaners, like a huge cleaners. And they're hiding because they know that these guys are coming. They kind of separated. Negan took the deputy and went one way. Maggie went the other way. This marshal comes in there, He has one guy standing by the door. He's like, don't let nobody get out. But nobody was getting out anyway. Neither were they, because it was filled with walkers at the door. He does start to say his name, the marshal. I'm Armstrong. I'm just trying to get, Negan. For the most part, he has some other stuff to say. He's trying to get Maggie to give herself up and tell where he is, or he's not going to help her, which, in light of seeing how he behaved at the bar, he ain't gonna help her anyway. But he does catch her, and he is just trying to kill her. He has his gun, his big gun, up against her neck. He's pressing hard. He's gonna kill her, and Negan did come through and was able to save him. And they kind of beat him up, but they didn't kill him, which I guess they couldn't, because then the show would be missing a big part of it. But I would have wanted to kill him. During this melee, the walkers did get past his one deputy that was standing at the door, so we lost him, and walkers got the other deputy, the one that they had taken. So RIP for the marshal's deputies. Negan and Maggie left the marshal on the ground. He was knocked out, but he wasn't dead. But there was also walkers coming through the door, so he'll have to make sure he's able to get up before they get to him, because they are coming through the door, and there were so many outside. Maggie and Negan continue to move forward. They're walking through that cleaners, and they go inside of a room that's black. Negan has some matches. He's holding the match. They're looking around, and all of a sudden, that lady that was on the top of on the roof of one of those buildings, she shows her face and scares the bejesus out of me, and then blows out the candle. And that's where we kind of ended for them, for Negan and Maggie. But then we meet the Croat. We actually see him. He's in the room. He has Hershel kind of tied to a chair, and I'm telling you, Hershel got to be 20 if he 15. No, he's a bigger boy. He has to be a teenager now, and he's trying to get him to talk. And Hershel is a badass. He's like, I'm not going to talk, but he got something for Hershel, because he went over to the drawer and got something that looked like an axe, and he was getting ready to torture Hershel, but got a call that a person had escaped, or he had escaped. We find out that it is a guy that escaped. He had been tortured. You could tell, you could look at him, that his face was marked up, he was scarred up. You could tell that he had been tortured. And the Croat was trying to get him, he was on the roof, so he was just looked like he was going to jump off the roof, but he was really just trying to get away from him. And the Croat was just like, no, just come on back. Just come on down. Everything will be okay. But he knew better. And he started to move around, try to go from the levels up to the different levels of roof that a lot of the Manhattan buildings have. And when he looked up at one, and he saw that it had just something like you could slide down, almost like a zip line. And when the guy got on it, and he started to slide down, the Croat just sat there and waited for him to get to a point where he could cut it, and he fell down 20 stories. He's really not a nice guy. And that's how this episode ended. So tell me what you think. I really can't wait to find out who that lady is, and if she captures Negan and Maggie, and where they take her. This Croat is crappy, man. I don't want to see Hershel being tortured in this series. That would just bother me so much. And what about this Armstrong? Will he get out of that mess? I'm sure he will. But what is he really looking for? Where is all of this going to take him? Where will it take him? So this was a great first episode. It made me excited to see what's going to happen next week. And I look forward to being able to see it and share it with everybody. So if you're liking the content, please take some time to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you'll get notifications for when I have the next video up. I think this is going to be a great series, and I'm glad we're going to be looking at it together. So until next time.